Welcome, everyone, to the High Performance Legal Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Arkfeld, president and founder of Prevail Legal Marketing. And today, Liz Wendling is joining us. She's the founder and owner of Rainmaking for attorneys, business coaching, and sales consulting. Liz is the Rainmaking attorney coach and the author of the Rainmaking Mindset and Consultations that Convert. Attorneys nationwide seek Liz out when they want to discover how to maximize their business development skills and win more business. Using a straightforward and practical approach, Liz teaches attorneys the business development skills they don't teach in law school. Liz works with attorneys who want to attract and convert more clients, differentiate themselves from the competition, and modernize their approach to align with the savvy legal consumer. Liz, thanks for joining us.
I'm happy to be here.
All right. Why don't you tell us how you got started in this journey of sales and coaching for attorneys?
Well, the journey of sales and marketing and business development started about 32 years ago. And only about 8 years ago did I get working with law firms. And it became something that found me. I didn't go after it. I was speaking at a conference here in Denver, and the topic was opening is the new closing. And it was teaching professionals, entrepreneurs, that everything you do in your sales conversations, sales situations, or your consultations have everything to do with how you treat someone, how you move someone through their decision-making process. And it's not about one snappy one-liner at the end that causes someone to want to leap over the counter and hire you. So somebody tapped me on the shoulder, and she was a manager of a law firm here in town. And she said, our attorneys suck at closing. Can you help us out? So I was introduced to the managing partner, had a conversation with him, and explained to him what I talked about in the keynote about how everything you do matters. From the moment you greet someone to how you treat them determines if they hire you in the end. Or do they say, I need to think about it, I'm not ready, or your services are too expensive for me. That was a sign that they were doing something or saying something in their consultations that was causing someone to not see them as their first and only choice. So they hired me, and that's where working with law firms started. I realized, wow, attorneys are really missing this skill. And if they don't have this skill, they are taking shots at ideal clients who are coming into their office. They're spending a fortune on marketing. And if they don't know how to move that lead into a paying client, money is flying out the window. So I realized I'm going to step up my game. And I wrote 2 books for attorneys talking about sales and selling legal services, and pretty much said, you've got to come out from behind the counter and the curtain. You can't pretend you're not selling legal services. You are not educating anybody anymore, because the savvy consumer is already educated. They're coming to you knowing exactly what they need and want, but they need your help in deciphering if you're the one.
Why do you think attorneys have resistance to the idea of sales?
Oh, well, because for 30, 40, 50 years, they were told, don't sell, just serve. Don't sell, just educate. You're the only type of service that's sold in the whole world that doesn't need to be sold. And attorneys love that. They bought into that, and they said, oh, good, then I never have to sell myself. And in the last 10 years, it has moved to the front burner versus the back burner. And attorneys are realizing, wow, if I don't know how to move someone who's interested into invested in a way that helps them see my expertise and my humanity and my ability to be authentic and smart and can help them with their legal situation, they're going down the street to someone else who has those skills where they can make a confident buying decision. Because if someone isn't confident, doesn't matter how smart you are. If they don't believe that you can help them because you're hiding behind the fact that I don't sell, then they will take their dollars and their business and their referrals down the street.
So if someone's listening to this podcast and they're thinking, I sell, I'm an attorney, I sell all the time. I have business coming in, I'm selling. And then you might look at them and say, you're not selling, like that's not selling. You're just saying, do you want to sign up? What are some characteristics or behaviors of attorneys that are not selling that they may be blind to? What are some things that someone could consider while they're listening to this?
Well, I'm going to answer that question, but I want your listeners to know I'm not guessing on this stuff. I know this stuff because law firms hire me as a secret shopper to actually go into their practice to find out, why are people not hiring us? Why is our phone ringing and we're only closing 20, 30, maybe even 50%, let's say? What are we doing and saying that is causing someone to say, I'll call you back, but then they don't? Or yes, I want to hire you, and then they ghost you. Or, you know what, let me see if I can find the money and I'm going to call you tomorrow, and then they never do. So they, instead of just saying, oh, they can't afford us, or oh, they don't know what they want, or they're looking for something cheaper, what they don't do is look at, what are we doing that may be causing someone to not want to hire us? So I go in and I go undercover, and they hire me to find out the good, the bad, and the ugly when it comes to what is really happening. Why is their marketing leads not translating into new clients? And then I provide them the evidence. And once I uncover the evidence and report back to them, it becomes painfully obvious to them why potential clients are not experiencing that customer experience that would make someone say yes to them. And then suddenly everything becomes really clear to them, and they go, oh, I never thought of that. Or I didn't realize that was such a big issue. Or wow, everyone else is doing it. Well, that's the kiss of death right there. Everyone else answers their phone the same way. Everyone else does it this way. And that is why you're being seen as a commodity, not as someone who is different and is creating a different experience for that caller who's on the other end. So some of the things that they're doing now, when I am secret shopping or when I'm even coaching my clients, there are dozens of little nuances in a consultation or even an intake call. When that phone rings and someone says, ABC Law Firm, how can I help you? What typically happens, and I'd say 95% of the time when I'm secret shopping, it sounds like this, Adam. Can I get your name and your phone number in case we get disconnected, like we ever get disconnected anymore? And here's my favorite. And how'd you hear about us? So I'm calling your firm with a problem. I may have just been hit in an accident. I may have just finally gotten the courage to call an attorney and talk to someone about a divorce. I may finally have gotten a DUI over the weekend or want to file for bankruptcy. And your firm says all over your website, I care about you. We care about you. We put our clients first. We're all about you. And you pick up the phone and you make it about the client. You make it about the firm, not the client. So right out of the gate, your website is saying that you're client centered, but you're really firm centered. When you come out of the gate asking those three questions, of course you need someone's name, and of course you need someone's phone number. But why do you have to qualify it by saying, in case we get disconnected? And so many people are afraid to ask that question because they qualify it by saying, just in case we get disconnected, when in fact we need your phone number in case we want to call you back as we develop this relationship. And then when you say to someone, and how'd you hear about us? Meanwhile, I might be bleeding. I'm in an ambulance, and you want to know if your marketing is working? You want to know where this marketing lead came from? Now, a potential client will answer you. They might say, I don't know, I looked in the yellow pages. But underneath, they're thinking, you SOB. How dare you ask me that? If you're so firm-centered, why do you care about your marketing? So this may not be happening on a conscious level for the client, but what's happening is right underneath the surface is that low-level aggravation. And that's how you're starting the conversation with them. Now, a couple of months ago, my garage door broke. And they asked me the same line of questioning. You call a plumbing company and they ask that same line of questioning. So how are you differentiating yourself when you're asking the same thing as my plumber and my garage door company? And so this is where firms get kind of stuck in the past, and these type of questions start to show their age, start to show the age of their process. And it's no different than when somebody makes it through those pearly gates and sits down and talks with an attorney. Same thing. They're doing the same thing. They're asking generic, boring questions that don't cause the potential client to go, this person's different, or I like the way they're communicating with me. So a lot of times they're resorting to that old school stuff, and that's where the problem starts.
Well, the irony is that we now have technology where you don't need to ask that question anymore, even through phone calls.
Yes.
We use CallRail a lot here, and CallRail shows you exactly where every single call came from. It was direct, it was organic, it was
Yep.
pay per click, it was Facebook, it was YouTube. So you don't even need to ask the question. Now, you touched on a lot of different things there. I wanted to ask you. All right, so you're talking about the call. You're talking about intake and someone answering the phone.
Sure.
What's your opinion on having a call center versus in-house? And I know that some of that is a function of the size of the firm, but the
True.
things that you're talking about are if someone's outsourcing their calls, it might be a little bit harder to control.
Mhm.
So, what's your take on that?
I get this question a lot with law firms that they say we may want to keep it in house, but we want to streamline it and make sure that everyone who picks up that phone understands the nuances of what is happening on the other end. Because when that phone rings and that person is on the other end, most of the time they're frustrated, they're pissed, they're sad, they're worried. They're coming to that call with an emotion, and it's typically not a great one. They're not excited to call a bankruptcy attorney. So, knowing that, we have to re engineer that phone call in a very different way. But if everyone answering the call understands that, how to use real empathy, not drive by empathy, and I could explain a little bit of that later. But a call center tends to have a real generic feel to it. They don't have that. They're what they're taught is just to get the basic information so that we can give it to an attorney, and they're missing all those little nuances that make someone say to themselves, I like this firm, I like the way they're treating me already, I like the way they're talking to me. And when that happens, that's when you know you've made some strides, because the first time a potential client chooses to interact with the firm, I always say they're in their mind, they're thinking five questions. These are the questions they want answered. They're asking themselves the minute you pick up the phone, and that's: do I like the way you interact with me? Do you listen to me? Do you make me feel important? Do you get me? Do you get me in my circumstances? And do I trust and believe you? Everything someone does and says, whether it's an intake call or a consultation, is filtered through those five questions, because we're all human. And those questions have to be answered. They have to say yes to these questions for them to go any further into your firm.
Now, so you're talking. So we've been talking about the intake person answering the phone.
Yep.
What about once they've taken the call, done the intake, scheduled the appointment, and do you tend to coach more on? I mean, this is you probably do both, but the business, sort of like the business, like a staff member, or the attorneys themselves. Like let's talk about like transitioning from the call to the attorney.
Okay, mostly attorneys. So I'd say 80% of my work is working with attorneys on their consultations, on that make or break conversation that either makes someone say, I'd like to hire you, I'd like to retain you, or I'm still attorney shopping. And so I'm teaching them those skills that are basic communication skills. They are the soft skills like empathy, like getting people to open up, showing someone that you really care without saying I care. You don't have to do that with your words. You get to do that by how you're in conversation with someone. And so often attorneys will say to me, wow, I never thought to do it that way, or now that you say that, that makes sense. And for example, when they're trying to do empathy, most of the time when I see people doing empathy, what they do, Adam, is I'm so sorry you're going through that. I am so sorry you're going through such a difficult situation. I'm so sorry this is happening to you. Well, guess what? It's not your fault. What are you apologizing for? So many attorneys are taught that this is empathy. And it's really not. It comes across and lands like sympathy on the client. So what it is a real surface and insincere reaction to someone's really sad and heavy circumstances. It's a little invalidating, sounds like a little bit of a brush off. and it's never heartfelt. Every time I'm on Facebook and I see someone post, my dog died, or my dad died, or my aunt died, and I read all the comments. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. The, you didn't. You weren't responsible unless you ran over that dog. You're not responsible, and saying I'm sorry doesn't really land as empathy. So when I teach them how to do real empathy, how to do appropriate empathy, compassionate empathy, the type of empathy that fuels connection and makes a potential client feel heard, feel understood. And remember, they're filtering those 5 questions through their brain. And when you show real compassionate empathy, not what I call the drive-by stuff that just sounds good. It sounds like, you're just throwing confetti in the air. That's when somebody goes, I really like this person. All those check boxes and those questions they're asking themselves tell are conveying that I do care about you. I am listening to you, and I am understanding your situation.
What's an example of that? I know exactly what you're talking about when, oh, I'm so sorry. And it's like, they're sincere, they care, but
Right.
the intention is good, right? I
Yes.
mean, no one has bad intentions in situations like that, but what is something that an attorney could say that would be the real empathy versus the drive-by?
And it could also be done in the intake call as well, because let's use personal injury, for example. And someone says, I was just rear-ended by a FedEx driver, or I just got to the hospital, I was in a car accident. And so instead of saying, I'm so sorry, you have the person's name, use it. This is to be able to use someone's name here to really get their attention and say, oh, Adam, oh my gosh, that sounds terrible. Are you in a comfortable place where you can have a conversation? Or where are you that you're calling me? Are you comfortable? Or Adam, that sounds so challenging. Are you able to complete our conversation? Would you like us to call you back? Whatever it is, I'm making the conversation about Adam, not me. I'm not saying I'm so sorry. I'm saying, oh, Adam, you must be in a lot of pain. Oh my God, thanks for explaining that. You were very detailed in your explanation. I really got a good sense of what you're going through. I know that what must have been hard. Thank you for going there. And it's using words like you and your, Mary, your situation, Jackie, what you're going through sounds so challenging. And you don't say it from your head like a sales technique. You really have to feel it come from your body and say, oh my gosh, Adam, are you okay? Are you in a comfortable place where you can chat with me? What a huge difference. Someone really feels that, wow, this person does give crap about me, and they're showing me that. But it's not just your words, it's how it's transmitted and how it's felt on the other person. You score some big points here if it's real, because then that person is more apt to seeing you as different than the other two, maybe the other two personal injury attorneys they spoke to. Where everyone else is doing drive-by empathy, your empathy is felt, and they start viewing you as that first and only choice.
Well, I would imagine that people would be worried about saying that because if you say, are you in a comfortable place to talk right now? It leaves an opening for them to get off the phone potentially. Like it almost, it's kind of like the opposite of sales training where, well, I mean, you're the sales coach, but like in my mind, it's like, you don't want to give people a way out, right? You kind of lead them down this path. And so if you say, are you in a comfortable place? And they're like, no, then you might have to say, I'm going to call you back and they're off the phone. But the reality is, if they're not in a comfortable place, they're probably not engaged. They're going to get off the phone anyway.
And they
And
wouldn't have called. They
right,
wouldn't have
exactly.
called you, right? And what that conveys is, and the question you asked is beautiful, because most half the audience will say, well, what about this? And the other side of the audience is like, okay, that makes sense. And but if you give people what they need, you get a hell of a lot more. But if in your mind you're thinking, oh, I can't let them off the phone, I got a live one here, they just fell in Whole Foods and they cracked their spine, I got to keep this person on the phone, then you're transmitting that you're only about the money and the deal and the case versus the human being before the case. You transmit that loud and clear, even though you're not saying anything. You're really conveying that through your words.
Right. So you're talking about building trust and empathy, and so the conversation evolves during a consultation. What are some of the next steps that attorneys need to be aware of through the progression of the conversation to take them, selling to take them from I'm consulting and now I'm transitioning them into a retainer or a close. What are some of those techniques or strategies?
Well, I always say a lot has to happen from nice to meet you to now I want to retain you. A lot has to happen in between there. So, what I teach my clients is to lay out a foundation in the beginning. When someone sits down with you or on a Zoom call with you, you want to take them on the ride before they strap themselves in and go on the ride. You want to let people know during our 45 minutes together today, Adam, here's what I'd like to accomplish, or here's what we're going to accomplish. First, I want to do this. Then you and I are going to talk about this. And then we'll wrap up with what our retainer fees are, or what it would look like if you'd like to retain our services, or what would the next steps look like if you're ready to move forward today. So the client feels like, oh, this person does this all day, every day, has a process, and is taking me through it, but is also helping me get a good sense of where we're going, helping me understand I'm likely someone who's never had a divorce, never been in a car accident, maybe never filed for bankruptcy. And you're slowly letting their walls come down by letting them know, I got your back. I do that without ever having to say, I got your back and I do this all day, every day. I'm conveying through my words that I know how to move you from the beginning of our consultation all the way to the end. So part of that, so now you've set the framework up, but it also is conveying when we're moving from one segment to the next. So a lot of times what'll happen is I might share my story if I'm secret shopping, and I'll tell about my horrible divorce or my terrible accident. And and then the attorney says, okay, well then let's talk about the process. And I'm left with whiplash because I just opened up a big wound and told you about my life, and you didn't do anything to close it. You didn't say anything to me to help me understand, okay, now we're done there, and now let's transition into how we make you whole. Or now let's switch gears and talk about the process of bankruptcy. So you're taking them over a couple of bridges, and you've got to take them over the bridge with the right words. You can't just say, okay, well, yep, that you're in a lousy divorce. Now let's talk about the process. You have to honor me that I just opened up to you and shared what's going on in my world. And it's never easy. That's a painful conversation to have with a total stranger on a Zoom call that likely I might have to tell this story 3 or 4 times if I'm attorney shopping. And if you miss that moment to make a connection with me and make me again start answering those 5 questions, I'm going to check you off the list, because one of the questions is, do you make me feel important? You didn't, when you just negated everything I told you. And sometimes a little tear might roll out of my face. I must have been an actress in another world, because I can turn it on. I can take on the mindset and the persona of somebody in that really sad place. And I'm watching how you're handling me going through that. So
I want to.
that so there's a lot of pieces to that. So when it's time to transition into the money piece, you don't want to shift the contents like we're going 100 miles an hour one way, and then all of a sudden you jerk the contents and now we just made a hard right. You want to move me into that place and move that person into the final piece, which is always money, always that next step, asking for the business or moving someone to say yes to you. So it's no different than transitioning from the first piece into the second piece, into the third piece, into the fourth and final phase. But what you've done is, first you told everybody, here's how the conversation is going to go. Here's how our time together is going to go. So you told them, and then you modeled it. You went, everything you said in the beginning, you are now taking me on that ride. It doesn't feel like you've shifted anything, or, I wonder why he didn't ask me that, or that's unusual. No, because you want them to feel comfortable opening up to you. But if you don't tell them what's going to happen, they might hold back. They're not sure why you're asking certain questions in the wrong place at the wrong time. So that's why that opening, and typically when I'm working with someone, we craft that together. I do not tell an attorney, here's your script, go for it. I take into account your practice area, your personality, your style, the words that feel like they're coming from your heart, not mine. And then we refine that, and that becomes the basis and the foundation of what I call your opening statement, the statement that makes you unique and true and opens people up.
So people come in, you help them craft that opening statement,
Mhm.
then the attorney progresses them through the various stages of that, asking for
Exactly.
background, talking about the process, whatever the case may be.
Mhm.
And they get towards the end, and are there particular ways, are there recommendations in the way that you ask for the close, ask for the money? I mean, is that a topic of conversation, or is it, everyone kind of rolls on their own?
Heck yes, because you have to be as comfortable talking about the law as you are talking about money. And when I'm either face to face secret shopping or on a Zoom call, this is where and now a potential client might not be saying to themselves, I want to watch how he talks about money. They're not saying that. But suddenly, if you start getting shifty and nervous, and I don't like many people don't like talking about money. Now, suddenly you were the strong and confident attorney who walked me through the process, made me feel important. I started liking you. And now I say to you, okay, Adam, you're the first attorney I talked to. I have no idea what a divorce costs or what a bankruptcy. I don't know how much I need to budget for. May need to borrow some money, and then the attorney gets a little squirmy or weird or doesn't like to talk about the money conversation. So what talk about is a strong money conversation. How do you get the attention of that potential client that basically says, all right, here's what we're going to do next. It's almost like you're grabbing them by the ears and saying, Adam, let's talk through that. Let's talk about, we just finished talking about the process. Now let's talk about some of the fees that are involved, what my retainer will be to get your case started, or what it would look like, what the fees would look like if you retained my services today. Let's talk that through. It's not about just telling them what it is. You're actually talking people through that process, no different than talking them through the legal process. So it sounds different for every practice area. It sounds really different from a bankruptcy versus a personal injury. But again, that language has to be crafted as well, because when an attorney stands firm and clear and strong in a money conversation and doesn't waver at all, and it makes that person feel good in their decision. It makes the potential client feel confident in their decision. If I say, oh, wow, Adam, a $5,000 retainer, that is outrageous. I don't know that I can come up with that. And then all of a sudden they say, well, I could take two. I'll take 2,000. Do you have 2,000? And all of a sudden it's like, well, then why'd you ask me for five? And now all the beautiful things that you've done in that consultation start to unravel because you don't know how to have that strong money conversation and talk someone through that place.
Well, and in contingency based like personal injury, it wouldn't be really a very good indication of their negotiating skills if they're negotiating the percentage rate just that easily.
Yes. Yes.
If that were
So
happening to me, I'd be like, all right, you're probably not the right guy.
that's right. And being strong, and let's say it is 33 and a third percent, and someone says, oh my gosh, that's ridiculous. Now you might be the first attorney I talk to, and I don't know if everyone else is 33 and a third or is somebody 15. And when attorney says, Adam, that is a very standard fee for personal injury, and here's why. Or let me explain the process to you, instead of just saying, no, I don't discount, or, yeah, I might be able to do it for 28. Suddenly you are now you're confirming to them. This is, I'm going to just say this just because it has to be on this in the room right now, is you don't want to confirm for them what they already think about attorneys. Okay. Just like in my world. Oh, you're one of those salespeople. No, I am a salesperson, but what I teach people and how I teach people how to sell is not like the 80s and 90s. I teach a much more modern way to help people make a decision. So the last thing I wanted an attorney to do is to confirm what might already be in the client's head, which is you're all out for the money. Yeah, I know you overbill me. I've heard about what happens. You charge me this and then you do that. You don't want to say or do anything that might confirm what they think. What you want to do is make them not even go there. Treat them so differently that it doesn't cause them to go to the place that they thought you were going to.
Yeah, and when you reduce the fee and they then see that margin there, they're not going to call it margin. They see
Yep.
that spread, then they believe that they could have been overcharged in the first place, and now
Yes.
trust has been eroded.
Yep.
Um,
And that's where people say, all right, well, you know what? Thanks for doing that, but I'm still going to shop around, because they'll never come out and say, ew, that was gross. What you just did to me made me not feel like I can trust you. Or remember the 5 questions. Do I believe you? Now, suddenly, I don't believe you. I don't believe that you are going to do what's in my best interest. And again, all your marketing, all of your advertising, the phone calls you get can be lost in one little instance if you cause doubt in their mind, if you cause them to not trust you. One little thing. So when I'm working, that's when I said a lot has to happen between nice to meet you and let's get started. A lot has to happen, and it's little things along the way, not these big grand gestures.
Now, everything you're talking about makes tons of sense. And, to me, sometimes it seems like, wow, that seems like kind of a lot. It's like a lot. You just said a lot of little things. So
Yes.
how does that unfold within a practice? I mean, I'm sure that it's, on a step-by-step basis, and you're not just saying, here's 50,000 things to do, right? I'm sure it's not that many anyway, but
uh,
you typically roll that out into a firm, so that it's manageable for them, especially if it's a smaller firm.
well, most of the time I'm working with smaller firms. I'm not working with firms that have 50, 60, 100 attorneys. I have worked with them, but more on a for an informational type of lunch and learn type thing where 50 of them can be on a Zoom call, but I can't do individual coaching for 50 people. So, for example, I just started working with a family law firm last week, and there's 5 attorneys. So, all 5 come together on a Zoom training, and I teach the the opening statement, let's say. Each of them then go back and have to create their own opening statement, but then they do that in an individual call with me. So it's a one-on-one with me where we role play it, we test it, we hear it, we tweak it, we move some language around based on their individual style. And I'll get 5 different opening statements with the foundation very set in stone, but somebody might like this word over that word, or somebody might say, "Oh, I like asking people about their time frame. Do they still have 40 minutes to finish our call today?" And somebody else is like, "Nope, I don't want to ask that question." As long as what they say moves the conversation to the next place and really feels good coming out of their body. So then I do that. We go to they have a week in between, they test it out, then we come back and we pick another part of the consultation process, and we're pulling it apart, but I work individually with them to put it back together in a way that works for them.
Nice. So, tell us more about the secret shopper. When you and I spoke before, I just find it so fascinating. I mean, how did this come to be, and how is it implemented in your practice? I think you said it's not a standalone service necessarily, but just tell me about how it works and how it's integrated.
Well, it is a standalone service, so I can secret shop someone. A firm will hire me, but I've only had one person say, "Okay, this was good. I know what I need to do." Only had one firm say they can handle it on their own. Every other firm said, "I wouldn't even know where to start." Like, I appreciate what you uncovered for us, but I can't fix this. There's no way. We don't even have a staff that could come in and fix that. And they want to know what it looks like to put that back together. Fix it, and fix it on the deepest level. Adam, I don't put patches or band-aids on anything. I tell them that this is a process. We're taking out pretty much like your transmission out of your car, and we're putting a new one in that's much more efficient and has longevity to it. It's going to get you better mileage because we're tweaking the old and we're replacing it with the new. So basically, I can do a standalone secret shop, and I'm happy to do that, to be able to report to someone that says, here's where you're missing opportunities to build trust. Here's where you're using those old school lines that don't build trust, they diminish it. And areas where you sound like a used car salesperson. So I can identify that, but I will not when they say to me, well, how would you say it differently? Or what's wrong with how we're saying it? And I know they're trying to get me for free consulting. And I'll say, it's not, I can't tell you because I don't know enough about you to fix that. But it also isn't fair to the people who do pay me to help them fix it. And then they finally go, all right, what's it going to cost? But so the secret shopping helps me kick open the door to get a real understanding of what's broken, not me saying, here's what I think you need. It is a deep understanding of the parts and pieces that no longer work with today's consumer. So sometimes what I'll do is when a firm hires me, they want me to do training anyway. They will give me access to each attorney. They don't know they're being secret shopped. So only the intake professional helps me set up their consultation. And I'll change my name on my Zoom consultation. And every one of them gets 5 different situations. I don't use the same one. And then at the end, when they find out you were secret shopped, she's not hiring our firm, we're hiring her. At first, they're not so happy because they got secret shopped. But then when they understand that, I talk to each one individually and say, here's the things you did really well. Here's what impressed me about your process. Here are some of the things that I can tell you learned 20 years ago that are not helping you today. And then they understand, oh, okay, not that's why people always say that, or that's why I keep getting the same objection. So it is a process. When someone hires me, it isn't just an email that says, hey, Liz, we want to hire your firm. I have to get under the surface first to make sure that I'm fixing something that's fixable. And maybe it's not a conversion problem. Maybe it's something else that they need to address first before they invest in my services. So it's a bigger conversation that happens, but mostly with that secret shop, when I report back to them, and they're surprised, they'll a managing partner will say to me, "Boy, you really got her personality. You really got that she could be a little grumpy. How did you get that in that phone call?" So when they can see that I can peek behind the curtain and really feel into who's talking to me, they're like, okay, then we have to do this. And in most cases, all they have to do is close 2 or 3 more clients in 1 month and they're done. My fees are paid for forever. They get to use the process.
Do you know how many secret shops you've done?
Oh, I've done I would say I'm probably close to, I want to say 500, but I don't think I'm quite there. So let's call it 485. And oh my gosh, I have seen people just go completely off the rails. And then I've secret shopped a few times, and I'm secret shopping 3 people in a firm, and 2 of them are rock stars. They're fabulous. And only one of them needs help, or the other 2 maybe just a little refining. But I am 100% honest with the firm when I report back, because I tell them, you can even listen to the recorded call if you'd like. I'm not telling you something that didn't happen on the phone call. And actually one firm did that to me. They listened to all 3 of them, and everything I said at the end of the call, they said, well, we know you're not lying to us because we listened to the call before. And I mean, I had never realized that somebody would do that, but I'm glad they did, because I wanted them to truly feel that I was coming to this call full transparency where stuff is breaking down.
Now, you mentioned, I mean, clearly people pay for your services. And so how do you sort of manage the ROI on this type of training? In my experience, my very limited experience, it's kind of one of those things where it's a little bit harder to, I mean, you have to have clear metrics. I mean, you really have to track everything. What's the best way for you to measure the effectiveness of your training? Because if someone's sitting out there like, I don't want to spend, thousands of dollars and I don't even know if it's going to do anything, like that's definitely an objection going through people's heads.
Right.
What's the conversation around that?
I usually know the closing ratio of each attorney going into this. So if they're at 18% closing rate, which is abysmal, it should be 30s and 40 should be the range. And anything over that is a bonus. So I know I can tell by the secret shop and by their conversion rate. So right out of the gate, I know what they're saying in their consultations, why people aren't hiring them, and then their conversion rate tells me that. So after 90 days in working with me, if their numbers haven't gone up, then I didn't do my job or they didn't do their job. So I tell the law firms, if they haven't gone up at least 10 to 15%, then they are not utilizing the training. They are not implementing everything that I taught them. But I know when they are and when they're not, because they have to role play with me. They don't get out of this without role playing with me. No one likes to role play and do practice. No one. But when they're doing it with me, I can coach them live and say, pause right there. You missed something. I need you to start doing this. But the way that I train is in little increments. So you learn a skill, you go use it. You build on that. Now you go do both of them. Now we're going to add another cherry on that. And now you're going to do 3 of them. So for me, if they do not increase their conversions in 90 days, then we have a conversation.
Hmm. So that's really interesting. I'd like to hear more about the metrics that are good and bad. So you said 18%, and that's the consultation coming in and then
Yes.
closing the consult, right? It's not just a lead. It's
No.
they're sitting down for the consult. That's the
Okay.
consult close rate.
Yes.
So if someone's closing 18%, that's low. One in
Very low. That is extremely low. That means they're doing and saying something that is causing someone to not feel that trust that they need to take a step forward and say yes to you. And a lot of times attorneys don't know where to look. What am I saying? How can I double that if I just keep doing what I'm doing? They think, well, I'll just buy more leads and have more consultations. And I say to them, yeah, you can do that, but you're still showing up with crappy skills. So that's just more people that you're attracting that are going to your competition. So when I say to them, why would you settle for your marketing dollars to feed the competition? Your marketing dollars, you might as well just write a check to your competition and say, put this toward your marketing because I want to help you with that, because they're not coming to me. They're wasting their marketing dollars, and because they're not investing those marketing dollars into training. You have these great leads. Do your best with every lead that comes in and watch what happens to your bottom line.
Yeah, we talk a lot about more top of funnel, gaps, which is answering the phone. It's shocking how many firms don't have overflow answering services
Yes.
when they're running ads and the ads are being run 24/7 and
Yeah.
call 8 o'clock on a Friday and no one's there to answer the phone until call back on Monday, if they even leave a message, which they normally
Yeah.
don't. So, we talk about those types of metrics, but down into the consult. So what's like an average close rate and what's an exceptional close rate? 20% very bad. What's average and what's amazing? Like if someone's like just crushing it right now, what would their close rate be?
I have one. I just did the metrics last week for a firm. One of the gals who is young and she wanted to learn these skills. She's closing at 89%. That's absurd. That's what I would call a rainmaking rock star. But the majority of the people in the firm are closing anywhere between 38 and 40. I think it was 44, 38 and 44. That's phenomenal, because when you think about it, not everybody is hiring on the spot. Sometimes they're coming back a month later, sometimes a whole year later. Sometimes someone is trying to get funding and they're not hiring on the spot. So a lot of times people will come back. But consistently in that range, about, let's call it 45 to 50%, that's amazing.
That's great. All right. Well, this conversation's been incredibly. I feel like I've learned a lot about sales. I'm not a sales guy. It's probably what every attorney says.
I hear that
No,
all
we
the
are.
time.
We are
Everyone's selling
always
something.
No, we're always selling something. So tell us a little bit about people that are listening, how they can get in touch with you, what an entry point looks like. Maybe they want to be secret shopped. What's the best way to get in touch with you?
They can go to my website, which is therainmakingcoach.com. And I have both of my books are on Amazon if they want to start there. But truly, the best way to really peek behind the curtain and have me show up as a secret shopper and looking at your firm through the eyes of a potential client, and looking at those little things that maybe they don't know are really important today, because we are dealing with a much savvy consumer. They're not going to put up with the crap they put up with 10 years ago. they're not going to put up with, how'd you hear about us right in the beginning of the call? Now, I'm not saying you can't ask someone, how'd you hear about us? But boy, is there a more strategic, more well placed, more genuine place to put that. And you could still get to the same resolution, but it's about massaging how you do it now. So even an email, they can get me at liz@lizwendling.com. But I really like secret shopping. It's one of my favorite things to do, just to kick off a conversation and really step in there and show people where some people might be hanging up and calling your competition.
Great. Well, Liz, thank you so much for joining us. And we'll see all you listeners in the next episode. Thanks a
Thank
lot.
you, Adam.